This is a floppy disk. Sony released this specific size and capacity in 1983. It's 3.5 inches and it stores 1.44 megabytes of data. You use these in the 80s to transfer data to your friends, for work, to install disks, to install drivers. Basically, this is the USB stick, the SD card back then. These aren't used anymore today. Obviously, we've moved on to things that are both faster, more reliable, have denser storages, and are less stupid. They're called floppy disks because the disk inside is actually floppy. The square shape is just a plastic shell to keep dust from getting on the disk, and this is a little cover to stop dust getting inside the case. You can actually see better with these transparent ones. You can see the disk in there and a little bit of foam to keep dust off the disk. There's not much you can do with these nowadays. They're still used in some industrial applications and for some machines. You know, old things. Here's the thing. I have quite a few of them, and I want to do something stupid. Each of these floppy disks are 1.44 megabytes, and you know what else is approximately 1.44 megabytes? A very compressed MP3. Oh my god, what am I doing? So an actual MP3, you know, a couple minutes, 3 minutes or so of audio is probably about 9 megabytes, 8 megabytes, which is, you know, almost 5 times bigger than one of these. But the thing is, nowadays people love things like cassettes and vinyls. Even though they've gone out of fashion, there's, you know, it's the tangibility of these things. People love to have things. And I was thinking, well, floppy disks are things. They're old, they're tangible, they're recognizable. I mean, we still use these things as the save icon in the hundreds of thousands of modern programs and graphical user interfaces. Why can't we put a song on one of these and make a little jukebox almost? They're fun. Right, so here's the plan. We've got our floppy disk. We can fit one song on these. What we're going to do is we're going to look for a compression format that compresses, you know, a 9 megabyte MP3 into a 1.4 megabyte whatever. So we'll be able to fit one song on each of these floppy disks. What I want to do is make this tangible, like a jukebox almost. You know those machines you get in diners with the discs that spin around, or a cassette deck. You have little boxes, or a vinyl record player. You have a physical disc. I want it to be fun. We need loader, and obviously you get the floppy disk drive. You put that in the front of a computer. You put the disc in. It makes noises. It clicks. We want to make it professional, so we'll have a little box. You know, it sits on your desk or in a rack. It's got a slot for the floppies to go in, a little disc reader. We could put a little LCD display on the front for printing metadata or the status of the thing. Obviously we need a power button, and it's going to play music, so we need a volume dial, but I want to keep it simple. I don't want play, pause, I don't want fast forward, I don't want rewind. So LCD here. I mean, we could put a rack at the top to hold our floppy disks. There we go. I mean, this is very simple. The 3 components of the floppy disk player, the LCD, and some sort of computer in the middle, a Raspberry Pi maybe, to process everything. And wow, would you look at that? We just so happen to have everything already. I've obviously got all these floppy disks, and I just so happen to have a lovely USB floppy reader right here. Yeah, pop them in there, ka-chunk. I even have my original Raspberry Pi from 2011. Oh my god, this thing is almost 12 years old. I went onto Amazon and bought these little 16:2 LCD displays. You know, they're like £6. Plug them into the GPIO pins on the Raspberry Pi and off you go. Now what we need is some really horrible code. I'm going to use my Windows laptop to flash this SD card for the Raspberry Pi. I've downloaded a pretty ancient version of Raspbian, and I'm going to use Rufus here to flash the image. There we go. Right, so before we even do anything with the Raspberry Pi, we're going to make sure that we know what we're doing with our floppy disks. So I'm going to write a quick bash script. We're going to see how this floppy drive actually works. See if we can get anything playing off it on my standard Linux laptop first. Right, so I've got the floppy disk connected right now, and we can use the LSBLK to see all the connected devices. So we can see quite clearly here that SDA at size 0 bytes is going to be the floppy disk reader. So I've got a blank floppy disk here, all we can do is put it in and see what happens. So you can see SDA here is now reporting size 1.4 megabytes. So that's exactly the size of the floppy disk. So we can mount the floppy disk using the mount command. We'll make a new folder, point it at the floppy disk reader, and we'll call the folder floppy. Floppy disk reader's going up again. There we go. And in here is absolutely nothing, but we could make a file. There we go, we've now got a file called balls on our floppy disk. And sudo unmount it, and it seems to be happy, so I'm assuming it's written a blank file named balls to this floppy disk. So all we're going to do is do that with audio files, and then when we insert them, we're going to make our script automatically mount the floppy disk, read the file and play it. Yeah, so it works. Now the thing is about the floppy disk drive showing up like this is it means we don't actually need to mount and unmount the floppy disk drive. We can just leave it mounted, insert the disk, and the files will show up in there. When we take the disk out, they won't. We just leave this mounted permanently, and as long as the floppy disks are all the same size and format and there's no weird differences between them, it should be perfectly fine. So I'm going to be using bash to create our program here, because it means we can have direct access to files, we can call other programs like FFmpeg to play the audio, and we should be able to call other programs to write things to our little miniature display. We shouldn't have to fuck around in importing loads of weird libraries if we wanted to do this in another language like C#. Obviously this does mean this code only works on Linux machines, but it's intended to be run on a Raspberry Pi, so you know. Right, so the next 3 minutes or so of footage are basically me writing the bash script, debugging it, and spending ages trying to figure out why it wasn't working. Turns out when you screen record in OBS, FFplay doesn't work. So I've decided that that's all boring, and you guys don't have to watch that. So you can get on with watching the prototype in action. If you do care about the code, it's all on GitHub, so screw you. Okay, we've got one more thing to add into here. And now, it should be working. So it says no disk. We insert this. It's playing the song. We'll give it a second. And there we go. Now, you might be able to tell this song is pretty compressed. And that is because the MP3 is not supposed to be 1 megabyte. So we'll have to look into a different audio format, which should work a lot better. When we take the disc out, it's not stopping. Why is it not stopping? It's supposed to stop. I know why that is. We've got to add no empty onto here. So now it should stop when we take the disc out. The reason it doesn't stop straight away is because the computer reads the entire disc, caches the song, and then plays it from memory. We want it to stop as soon as we take the disc out. There we go, it's playing now. As if you were taking out a cassette or a, you know, a CD or a vinyl. So it should. There we go, it stops as soon as you take the floppy disk out now. That's perfect. So I'm going to be putting all of this code on my GitHub, so if you want to create your own ridiculous, stupid floppy disk audio player, you're more than welcome to. And if you want to contribute and improve the code for it, please be my guest. So now we've confirmed that we can get a pretty functional version of what I want using just a floppy disk, a Linux laptop. All we need to do now is put it all on the Pi and polish it up. In my own time, I've set up a SSH on the Pi, which means I don't need to plug in a display and a keyboard to this. All I need to do is hook it up to Ethernet and power. I've got Ethernet from my access point up here, but it's pretty ugly, so please ignore the cable. And we just need to plug this in. The Pi has power. Because my desktop's pretty out the way, I'm going to get the Linux laptop back out. We'll be using this to connect to the Pi. So I've already assigned a static IP address to the Raspberry Pi, so we should just be able to SSH straight into it. and there we go, we're connected to the Raspberry Pi on the desk here. So these little LCD displays use something called I2C to connect to the to communicate with other microcontrollers and computers. It's just got 4 pins here that we need to hook up to the general purpose in-out pins on the Raspberry Pi if we want to display things on here. So I'm thinking what we can do is put this on the front of the player and have it show what song's playing, how long's left, you know, if there's no disc inserted, if there's any trouble that's going on, because the Pi isn't going to have any output aside from the music and this little screen, I guess. I should probably turn the Pi off for this. There we go, that should all be hooked up correctly now. So we'll set up a little screen here. There we go. And we'll hook it up to power, see what happens. And straight away there we can see the display lighting up, that's a good sign. I've dropped the brightness on the camera here way down so you can just about see the display. We have a look at Hello World. And then it just displays fuck you and my Discord tag at meowing. So let's have a look if it works. Python hello world.py. And there we go. It shows what we want on the display. So this should be perfect for my use case. We can even write a little Python script to scroll text across it if we like. Should be pretty simple. Right, so we've got everything working. We've got the display working with the Pi, and we've got the floppy disk drive working with my Linux laptop. So we should just be able to copy the code from here onto the Raspberry Pi, plug this into that, put the disk in the thing, and it should do the stuff. So I've got this aux cable hooked up to my my audio controller, so we should be able to plug this into the Pi and we'll hear it directly instead of through the, you know, crappy speakers. We can see the displays come on here. All I need to do is SSH into it. We've got our disk with the MP3 on there already and prepared. So we just need to mount the reader. There we go, the floppy disk reader is mounted there, so we should be able to go to the disk, and then we can see song.mp3 in there. There we go, I've set the camera up so you can see the display there, and you might just about be able to make out the floppy disk reader, but here we go. So let's run the script. So we can see it says FDD Jukebox and no disk there. So we should just need to insert this disk and it will play our song. I haven't put the metadata on this disk, so it will show no metadata, but I've got some other songs we can try in a minute, so let's give it a go. Yeah, no metadata, playing song. And there we go. Let me turn it up a little. So you can tell the audio is very compressed and very low quality, and that is because we're using compressed MP3s. So if I take the disc out, there we go. So what we need to do is have a look for an audio format that's basically not shit. MP3s are so ancient and crusty, and I don't understand why anyone uses them anymore. So we shouldn't use them anymore. Now thankfully, the only thing we need to change if we want to play a different format is change the extension here from MP3 to what I'm going to try now, which is an Opus file. Now this is a high quality compressed audio format that actually Discord uses for its audio compression of voice chat. So what I have here is the same song but encoded with Opus instead of MP3, and I've also put the metadata on there, so we should be able to see that too. So let's run the scripts. Let's put the disc in. There we go. It says the song title there and the artist's name. And there's the song. And it is nowhere near as compressed. Much higher quality.
And this is how it starts.
Turn it down. And as soon as we take the disc out, it should stop. There we go, disc removed. So there we have our first functional prototype of everything running on the Pi. We've got a decent audio format on the floppy disk, we've got the display that prints out the metadata, got the floppy drive reader. We've got the Pi hooked up over aux into my audio interface so we can record it. So what I'd like to do is load, I've got a red floppy disk here, and I know just the song to put on this one. So I'm going to insert it into the Pi, kill the script, make sure there's nothing on the disk. All clean. So let me download the song here. I'm going to open Audacity on here to change the format to Opus. Export audio, Opus. Keep it at 48 kilobits, should be enough. Now I'm going to use a command called scp to copy it to the Pi. There we go. And we'll copy it to the floppy disk now. So, got the disk out, let's run the script. Now when I put this disk in, it should play the song. There we go, it's showing up on the screen. Give it a second. There we go. Let's let it run for a minute. This is playing off a floppy disk. Let's see if we can. Drop the ISO down so you can see the screen there. This is playing off a floppy disk right now, and when I take the disk out, it stops the song. There we go. So there we have it, our first fully functional prototype. We've got the Raspberry Pi, the display and disk reader all working together to play songs off these floppy disks. So the next thing we need to do is just build a chassis for this, build a frame and put it all together. So that's what I'll be doing in the next video, and we'll also be making some lovely cover art to put on these discs to make them look all pretty with a song title and artist name. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Next one is probably going to be much later, so yeah, have fun.